Coming in at number 10, we've got a video game honorable mention with the Wolverine symbiote from the game Spider-Man: Web of Shadows. In this title's storyline, Wolverine has traveled to New York City to deal with a growing symbiote infestation, and even briefly fights Spider-Man when he believes the wall crawler is actually Venom. Unfortunately for Wolverine, he finds himself overwhelmed by actual symbiotes on top of a church and attacks Spider-Man again as the Wolverine symbiote. With all of his usual healing abilities on top of all the symbiote enhancements that the alien parasites offer, this version of Wolverine might just be one of the grossest versions we've ever gotten to see. Coming in at number 9, we have the brainwashed Wolverine of Earth 14850. At one point in the regular Marvel universe, Wolverine was captured and brainwashed by HYDRA in order to assassinate the Avengers, but luckily was able to be deprogrammed before he did any real damage. On this alternate Earth, however, the deprogramming never took place, and Wolverine's killing spree of superpowered heroes was able to last for months. Armed with all of his incredible abilities, absolutely no remorse, and the addition of HYDRA-developed teleporting technology that nullified even Wolverine's usual weaknesses, and this was a horrifying enemy that even the Avengers couldn't handle. Coming in at number 8, we've got a live-action detour with X-24 from the 2017 film Logan. An allegedly perfect clone of Wolverine, but with none of the compassion or humanity, X-24 was treated like an attack dog and followed the orders of Xander Rice to hunt down and capture the real Wolverine and the young mutant girl he was protecting. Based on Wolverine during his prime years, he was able to physically overcome the true Wolverine and was only able to be defeated at the last minute by a bullet made of pure adamantium right to the skull. Coming in at number 7, we have the vicious Vampire Lord Wolverine. In an alternate universe where vampires have launched an all-out assault on the United States, most of the X-Men are bitten and mind-controlled by the Lord of the Vampires, Dracula. Unfortunately for Dracula, however, Wolverine's healing ability allows him to regain his own mental control despite becoming a vampire, and thus is able to overthrow Dracula and become their leader. Consumed by a bloodlust that amplifies his already pretty terrifying rage, Wolverine and his vampire army are able to wipe out most other superpowered life on the planet, only finally being defeated by the combined forces of Doctor Strange and the Punisher as a vampire hunting duo. Coming in at number 6, we have the infamous Zombie Wolverine. Many superheroes and villains of the Marvel Universe found themselves infected with an undead plague on the alternate world of Earth 2149, but Wolverine might be the character who experienced the oddest side effects from becoming a member of the Zombie Legion. Initially fighting alongside Magneto to help defeat the undead threat with the X-Men, Wolverine was eventually bitten and overwhelmed while attempting to defend Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D.'s main base of operations. Turning against Magneto, this version of Wolverine slowly discovered his healing factor was affected by his zombification, meaning his arms could no longer support the adamantium claws throughout his body. Attacking any living thing he could with the shreds that remained of his limbs, this version of Wolverine would go on to even consume Galactus, becoming a cosmic undead threat to the rest of this very doomed Marvel Universe. Coming in at number 5, we have the villainous Wolverine of an alternate future, Saberclaw. Hailing from Earth 982, this son of Wolverine and an unknown woman absolutely hates his original father, so much so that it seems to have literally changed him into appearing more reminiscent of Sabretooth than his actual dad. Wearing adamantium sheaths on his bone claws to make them even deadlier, Saberclaw was briefly a member of this universe's Sinister Six before eventually being convinced to put his differences aside with his father and help defend the world from the threat of Galactus and the daughter of Loki. Just another day in complicated comic book family dynamics. Coming in at number 4, we have Daken, the dark son of Wolverine. Named after the Japanese term for mongrel dog, Daken is the tragic child that Wolverine never knew about, his mother being murdered before Wolverine even knew he had a kid. Cut from his mother's body, Daken was raised to hate his father, and in their very first encounter, slashed open his stomach and left him to die. With the same incredible healing abilities and bone claws as his dad, Daken has had a long road of trying to find his proper place in the world, and has fought on the sides of both good and evil over the course of his tragic life, but hopefully he'll stay more on the side of good going forward. Coming in at number 3, we have HYDRA Wolverine. Hailing from the reality known as Earth 1720, this version of Wolverine is fully committed to the evil ideology of the organization HYDRA, complete with a new green and yellow color scheme to his costume. Married to this universe's version of the Invisible Woman, who also happens to be this universe's version of Madam Hydra, this Wolverine was apparently successful in conquering his home reality along with his lover, and has since begun to travel the multiverse searching for more worlds to destroy in the universe's most twisted romantic honeymoon. Luckily for the Marvel multiverse, this Wolverine would be defeated by a variant of Kitty Pryde and the rest of the Exiles, who wound up tricking him into stabbing himself with his own adamantium claws. Better luck next time, Hydra. Coming in at number 2, we have the Wolverine from the Age of Apocalypse universe. In an alternate world where Charles Xavier is dead and Magneto is leader of the X-Men, Wolverine is a brutal warrior named Weapon X who has to be constantly subdued by the psychic abilities of Jean Grey in order to be a functioning member of the X-Men team. Eventually losing a hand while going on a suicide mission to rescue this version of Jean from a version of Cyclops, this version of Wolverine for a time had heroic ambitions, but gave them up after being granted the power of the Celestials and turned into Weapon Omega, now determined to bring about the evolutionary future that he'd initially stopped the mutant apocalypse from achieving, and declaring war against all of humanity. This new Weapon Omega is the farthest thing possible from Wolverine's usual heroics. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have Brother Mutant, an evil variant of Wolverine combined with some of his greatest allies and greatest foes. On Earth 127, a male variant of the Scarlet Witch, known as the Scarlet Warlock, attempted to cast a spell that would transfer Wolverine's adamantium skeleton to Magneto, thus giving Magneto an incredible power boost given his magnetic abilities. However, something with the spell went wrong, and the Scarlet Warlock, Wolverine, Magneto, Quicksilver, and the villain Mesmero were all merged into a singular being known as Brother Mutant. All 5 of these mutants' powers combined into one villainous figure, Brother Mutant was such a powerful threat that a multiversal team of other, more heroic Wolverines had to be assembled specifically to stop him, just to ensure that all of that power wasn't unleashed on the rest of the Marvel multiverse.
Number 10, we have Magneto from Earth 9997 or Earth X. In this arc, the governments of the world enlist Sentinels to round up all the mutants they could find and put them into quarantine camps. This angers Magneto, who sees mutants as his brothers, and he knows he can't just fight against the Sentinels there and then because they're immune to his powers. So instead, he tricks them into following him to the Savage Land, where he knows the air was thick with iron, meaning he could manipulate it to defeat the Sentinels. So with that plan in effect, Magneto uses this advantage to construct Sentinel City with the help of the robots, and has his former lackey Toad endowed as an honored citizen, which is pretty nice of him as well, if I do say so. Down the line, when Absorbing Man tries to absorb the entire island of Manhattan, Magneto unleashes an all-out assault using his Sentinel army to defend New York. He fails, but at least he tried. So saving his entire race, trying to save New York, and being nice to Toad, I think it's fair to say that this version of Magneto acted heroically with some pretty dang good intentions. Number 9 on our list comes from the Secret Wars storyline, where the X-Men turn to Magneto as an ally to help defeat the Beyonder. In this reality, there is a common enemy for superheroes and Magneto to face together. This isn't done without some friction though, as the good guys still hold things against him. In fact, when they first consider joining up against the Beyonder in issue 1, everyone argues with Magneto, who won't stop pushing his problematic philosophies, but Professor X vouches for him, and in a later issue, after some more infighting, Magneto finally comes around. The tough part of this storyline is that Magneto really is a huge asset to the team in their efforts against the Beyonder, but his arrogance and insecurities just make it so hard to work with him. So yes, Magneto is a hero in this storyline, but he doesn't really have that wholesome energy that most superheroes flaunt with ease. At least he stands by what he believes. I'll give him that much. Alright, at number 8 we have the Magneto from Captain America 5. In this storyline, Magneto is once again finding his way into Captain America's business, but not to team up with the hero. Well, in a way I guess he sort of is. This version of Magneto isn't much different from the rest. He's still got the backstory of the Holocaust, and with that comes a lot of totally justifiable and understandable resentment, especially when it comes to facing off against Red Skull, a known Nazi character. In Captain America issue number 367, Magneto spends the whole time chasing down Red Skull, at one point facing off against at least 9 Red Skull decoys. It goes without saying that the reader is meant to be rooting for Magneto in this part of the story as he seeks out his just revenge against Red Skull. I mean, Red Skull even does a salute and everything. It's an old comic. Can we even show that? But what makes this version of Magneto really deserve a spot in this list is how he handles Red Skull once he gets the best of him. Instead of acting like a villain and doing what Red Skull would have done, killing him, Magneto just leaves him in a cold, dark cell. He rises above the evil deeds of Red Skull and leaves him to think about the horrors that he'd perpetrated. Bam! Take that, Red Skull. That was a satisfying and definitely heroic moment for Magneto. Alright, let's move on to number 7 with a newer X-Men storyline, Dawn of X. In this storyline, which only came out in February 2020, Magneto is once again coming to the aid of the mutants at Professor Xavier's school. This comic series tells the story of Professor X trying to build the first mutant civilization on an island called Krakoa, which is actually an effort that Magneto could get on board with, considering his strong convictions for equal rights for all mutants. Right off the bat in the first issue, we have Magneto showing tenderness towards Cyclops, a typical enemy of his, as they face off against apes with PhDs. Tragically, spoiler alert, Professor X is assassinated and Magneto is in a state of deep mourning for his old friend. And later we see Jean Grey trying to appeal to a depressed Magneto who seems to have forgotten his old grudges against the X-Men. They work together to try and resurrect Professor X, and I'm not going to tell you what happens because this is a new issue and you should read it. But once again, Magneto has found a common thread with the other mutants in this storyline, ending up fighting alongside them rather than against them. Alright, at number 6, it's the Magneto in original Uncanny X-Men, where the supervillain actually comes through a number of times. Firstly, in issue 150, we see him defusing a very serious situation where Russian nukes are headed towards him and others. Although this actually was an attack to prevent Magneto from doing his own evil deeds, he stops a nuclear attack nonetheless, which could arguably have been more detrimental than what he'd have planned. Further down the line in issue 200, there's a trial taking place where Magneto is facing charges against him, but he redeems himself when he saves the courtroom and eventually Professor X again from attacks from the Von Strucker twins, Andrea and Andreas. He ends up protecting Professor X at first from certain death, but loses him at the end of the day, and Professor X's dying wish is for Magneto to take over his school and to guide the new mutants towards greatness, which Magneto agrees to do. We even see Magneto shed a tear when Jean Grey realizes that Professor X's energy is no longer detectable. And as the series goes on, Magneto does take over the school and acts in Professor X's place. I think there's a theme here. Magneto's good side only seems to come out when he's trying to protect or avenge his old friend Charles Xavier, and when he's fighting Nazis. Okay, at number 5, we have pre-radicalized Magneto from issue 161 of Uncanny X-Men. In a set of flashbacks, Professor X brings us back 20 years to when he was introduced to Magnus, aka Magneto. This version of Magneto appears to be caring and not yet troubled by his twisted philosophies that later dictate his questionable actions. In this flashback, which takes place near the end of World War II, we see Professor X and Magnus trying to rehabilitate a young woman who had once been a prisoner in Dachau, infiltrating her mind and trying to free her from a catatonic state. This effort seems to be one of good nature on the part of Magneto and shows an alternate version of him that is protective and concerned. He saves Charles and the young girl from a cave, collapsing it on Baron von Strucker and levitating them to safety. Of course, this is soon muddled up by a conversation that he had with Professor X regarding philosophies of mutants and where they inevitably disagree. They end up arguing and Magneto flies away with a bunch of gold they just found together. Well, you know, it was nice while it lasted, right? Okay, at number 4 we have Magneto from X-Men Legacy. We find ourselves in a world where mutant kind is at risk of extinction. An army of Sentinels have made it their duty to exterminate all mutants, another common enemy that Magneto and the X-Men decide to face together. In issue number 237, Magneto is depicted without his typical costume and super jacked, facing off against a convoy of Sentinels sent to finish off the last remaining mutants. He fends them off the best he can, protecting Cable and a young new mutant, Hope, classic, who is just that to the mutant cause, the only hope they had left. You see what they did there? Anyway, in this epic confrontation with the Sentinel horde, Magneto gets a one-up on them when he reveals that the asteroid they're fighting on had been built by himself, and it had been built out of, you guessed it, iron. So he pulls up some big nasty spikes from the ground and takes out a handful of them all at once. That's right, an absolutely jacked, zaddy Magneto holding the final frontier before the extinction of all of mutant kind, using his final shreds of energy left to do something so heroic, it arguably changed the outcome of this whole storyline, for the greater good. Alright, number 3, we've got the Magneto from Earth 2149. For those of you who don't know already, they did us the absolute service of creating a series where Marvel superheroes and villains alike face off against zombies. And not only that, but superpowered zombies. Yes, the infection only affected those with superpowers who quickly overpowered the non-superpowered population, humans, but one of the biggest forces defending against the zombie horde is none other than Magneto, who takes his last stand cutting the zombies off from other dimensions. But when this Magneto really starts looking like a hero is when the battle ensues between him and the zombies. This is heroic because although he's still facing off against the good guys, they're not really the good guys. They just sort of look like them. Unfortunately, this doesn't last long before Magneto's hubris once again gets the best of him, and while he's bragging, he gets snuck up on and torn to pieces by Zombie Hulk and Zombie Thor. But once again, it was good while it lasted. Number 2 goes to Magneto from the Age of Apocalypse universe, where he dedicates his efforts to going back in time and preventing his friend Charles Xavier's death. In a world where the extremely powerful supervillain Apocalypse reigns over America, Magneto sends Nightcrawler, Colossus, Kitty Pryde, and Gambit to find ways to protect humans from a genetic war that he knew was looming. That's right, he was protecting humans in this reality, seemingly going against his usual resentful philosophies that couldn't allow for coexistence. Once his mission succeeds and the original Marvel universe is restored, Magneto turns to Apocalypse and tears him apart. This arc ends with Magneto reunited with his wife and son, standing along a Charles Xavier who is once again alive and well. And with Apocalypse gone for good, all was right in the world, at least for that time. And it was all thanks to the leadership and heroic actions of this alternate version of Magneto. At number 1, we have Magneto from Magneto Testament. This is not a light read. This isn't a story of Magneto coming to the aid of the Fantastic Four or the Avengers. In this story, we learn about Magneto's origin, which we all know began during World War II. He was a young Jewish boy named Max Eisenhardt, trying to survive in a world where dangers exceeded even the worst supervillains in any comic book. He does everything he can to survive, all the while trying to protect Magda, the girl he loves. He makes deals with the guards to keep her safe, all the while supporting an uprising that eventually frees he and Magda from their captivity. This version of Magneto belongs at number 1 because our sympathies for this younger version of the supervillain extend beyond the world of comic books and into real life. This young Magneto heroically traverses the horrors of those times, capping off one of the most captivating and impactful origin stories out of any comic book series to date.
Number 10, Ultimate Storm. While Storm is considered an Omega level mutant and is also the queen of mutant Mars currently in the Ultimate Universe, she isn't quite as powerful. Here, Storm still has her weather manipulation mutant powers, but she also doesn't seem to have immunity to them, and they aren't quite as powerful as her 616 version. Now, I put mutant in quotes there because the mutants really aren't quite the same in terms of their origin in comparison to her 616, so I'm not sure if we even really consider them mutants following the revelation that they were created as a result of Super Soldier Serum, basically experimentation runoff. Storm in the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610 can use her powers to influence the weather by commanding meteorological energy patterns. However, this doesn't mean that she herself is immune to their effects. She can potentially electrocute herself, catch fire, or even catch a cold just from being out in the rain too long, which aren't really symptoms that 616 Storm seems to be vulnerable to. She is still, however, a skilled and agile thief in this universe. Number 9, Queen of Asgard. Storm and Thor have always been a fan favorite ship for many comic book readers and lovers of the Marvel Universe. Why? Well, because they both have weather-based powers, and a lot of people see the God of Thunder as the perfect match for Aurora, goddess and commander of lightning. Though, I do think they both also have thunder and lightning powers themselves individually. A lot of people are like, Thor is like thunder, Storm is lightning. I'm pretty sure they can do both of those things. Still, these two have been shipped for a while, but we haven't gotten a ton of payoff when it comes to prominent alternate realities where they end up together. Enter Thunderstorm. Thunderstorm, of course, never made it onto the comic book page, but was a character in development that creators Saladin Ahmed and Javier Rodriguez had hoped would get to show up in their Exiles run from 2018. Alas, the story never got on long enough for Thunderstorm to be introduced, which is the only reason this version of Storm, Thunderstorm's would-be mother who ended up as a ruler of Asgard and took Thor for her consort, is ranked so low on this list. She and her daughter never really got to exist, but the concept for Thunderstorm and her family is so awesome I just needed to talk about it. And technically the concept still exists in the world, so we could see Thunderstorm and we could see her mom at some point somewhere in the multiverse. It was an idea that was written down, and the concept art for it is beautiful. I love this design for Thunderstorm. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more Storm lists, goodness knows I want to give you more Storm lists. Also, like, there's just not a lot of Storm content in the world of the internet, and there needs to be more of it for how much we love her. Be sure to let us know you want more of it by giving this video a thumbs up. Also comment below and tell me about how much you love Storm. Number 8. Storm, War to Come. It's the final countdown for this version of Storm. Here in the Millennial Visions short story X-Men War to Come, which apparently takes place on the alternate Earth of 1033, Storm is one of the final remaining X-Men who must fight against an all-powerful Magneto, currently in Rogue's body. This all happened after Magneto learned he only had a few months to live. This prompted him to attack, creating an all-out battle that would decide the future of mutant kind. Storm was gravely injured in that fight but survived. Storm's pain, however, was what inspired Rogue to give it her all in defeating Magneto. She absorbed his powers but also much of his mind and memories. As powerful as Magneto's consciousness was, he was able to overtake Rogue's body. Only Storm, Wolverine, and Nightcrawler remain on this Earth to stop him during a final stand in the Savage Lands. We don't know how that went, but we can assume it went well because Storm was among the 3 that survived, so sounds like it's gonna go well to me. Storm, Wolverine, and Nightcrawler also sounds like a good OP team. Number 7. MANGAVERSE. There are kind of a couple different versions of Storm when it comes to the MANGAVERSE, but the one that I like the best is the one who is an all-powerful witch. She is not only a mutant but also a powerful magic user here who was once in a powerful coven with Amanda Sefton. While Amanda Sefton became obsessed with dark magic and corrupted by it ultimately, Storm would go on to join the X-Men. One day, however, she would be forced to face her past as the electromagnetic demon Magnus, once summoned to Earth by Sefton, returned, requiring Storm to take action. This version of Storm, which we see in Marvel Mangaverse X-Men, is also a leader of the X-Men. Which honestly, Storm should be leader of the X-Men. She's a badass, alright? Actually, I can't believe, I feel like that's only happened a few times in the comics, and how disappointing. How disappointing. Number 6. Zombie Storm. Storm in the Earth Z alternate universe of Earth 2149 was actually pretty powerful and capable. Before becoming a zombie, she was one of the few remaining superheroes left alive. She is initially approached by Magneto along with the other X-Men to join him and help save the world. She also is one of the few who makes it onto the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, where Nick Fury debriefs them on the apocalyptic situation and calls for a cease of hostilities between all villains and heroes, as you know, right now they need all the help they can get to save the Earth from the zombie invasion. Eventually Storm would become a zombie, but even then it is implied that she made it through till at least the zombie Galacti showed up. And let's be honest, not a lot of zombies made it past that point, so if you make it to that point, to me, you're doing pretty good as a zombie in Marvel Zombies. Number 5. WINDRIDER. This version of Storm is a hero who survives in the Age of Apocalypse alternate Earth of 295. Here Storm goes on to become enhanced by celestial technology, granting her precognitive powers. She initially takes up the name WINDRIDER in this reality and builds up her own nation, attempting to protect her people there from Apocalypse. Despite being captured and defeated by Apocalypse, WINDRIDER manages to withstand his mistreatment of her and even resist the telepathic probing of Shadow King. It's pretty crazy, because Shadow King is pretty powerful. She summons a storm using her powers that is so great it creates a huge power outage, thereby giving her the window she needs to escape. Aurora here is given the name Storm by Apocalypse, but later on takes up the codename Aurora Diaz. Number 4. BLOODSTORM. BLOODSTORM is an alternate version of Aurora Monroe, who was also once known as Storm. She was a member of the X-Men up until she was taken by Dracula, who intended to make her one of his vampire brides. While he succeeded in turning her into a vampire here, she proved too strong for him to control, and she ultimately overthrew and defeated him. Later on, Storm would also face Dracula again in a final showdown, where she would succeed in killing him. Her powers are those of Storm of Earth 616, the main continuity, but in addition to that, she's also a vampire. As such, she can use her powers to turn others into her thralls, make them do her bidding, as she did with Kitty Pryde, who had previously tried to kill her old friend and mentor. Kitty was very much like, no vampires, I don't like it. She also possesses all the skills Storm normally has when it comes to her thievery skills and presumably some of her fighting skills as well. As a vampire, BLOODSTORM also possesses superhuman strength, speed, durability, and shapeshifting powers. She can turn into mist. Number 3. Goddess of Thunder. This alternate version of Storm comes from the multiversal patchwork world known as God Emperor Doom's Battle World. Here Storm wields the mystical hammer known as Stormbringer. She ends up becoming one of the members of God Emperor Doom's elite police force known as the Thor Corps. Even gaining a place on this team is a huge accomplishment. This version of Storm, I believe, still has her own standard powers, but also wields the power of Stormbringer, making her extra electrifyingly powerful. Not only that, but she should get extra power points for just how epic and badass this version of her looks. I love this character design. Number 2. Storm, Goddess of Thunder. Our previous Goddess of Thunder isn't the only one to exist out in the multiverse, by the way. In one of the realities we get a glimpse into through millennial visions, this one being classified as Earth 1027, Storm became more attracted to violent elements of nature, preferring to spend time in the eyes of hurricanes, tornadoes, and storms. She ends up falling in love with Thor, which created a conflict with Terene, who also loved him. Thor would ultimately be forced to kill Terene as she was driven mad by Loki's mischievous magic and, well, attacked. As such, Storm would inherit Terene's hammer and become known as the Goddess of Thunder. Number 1. Storm Phoenix. This version of Storm appeared in the What If story, What If Storm Had the Power of Phoenix. It was featured in issue 79 of the first volume of What If from 1989. Here Storm ends up as the Phoenix instead of Jean, after she creates a tornado to save the shuttle she and her fellow X-Men are as it hurtles down towards Earth from outer space. The real Storm, like Jean, ended up gravely injured and basically comatose, kept in a pod under the sea, while the Phoenix took her place, becoming a sort of an imprint of her and itself melded together, the Storm Phoenix. The Storm Phoenix was all powerful, but while Aurora was fair, just, and compassionate as a person, the Storm Phoenix eventually became cold as ice and cruel to those who disobeyed her laws while she ruled over Earth. Initially, life was basically like a paradise, but as her punishments became more and more unforgiving, the world slowly became a hell where those punished and those even in the vicinity were killed by vicious storms that the Storm Phoenix would unleash on them. Eventually, Storm Phoenix would be defeated. While it's vague how this happened, it is implied that multiple warheads had to be deployed to blow her up, or at the very least just to scare her off. So she is gone, but also it took a lot, because Storm Phoenix.
Number 10. What If. Since Disney's What If drops in mere weeks, we have to kick off the list with Volume 2, Issue 74, titled What If Mr. Sinister Formed the X-Men. In this What If, we find Cyclops and Havoc being raised by Mr. Sinister himself. What a happy, healthy home to grow up in. So Scott was leading this team of what he thought was heroes. The team consisted of himself, Havoc, Sabretooth, Madeline Pryor, and Sauron. So they of course ran into the X-Men, the current team being led by Marvel Girl, who Scott was immediately attracted to, page 15 and 16. Cyclops feels like he's known her his whole life at this point. He feels the connection and it changes his entire outlook on mutants. He only feels warmth and concern with her. But Mr. Sinister said they were traitors. How can this be? Maybe the guy named Mr. Sinister lied to Scott. Number 9. Mr. S. The alternate future of Earth X shows us a world that could go, well, either way. Every human was given superhuman abilities after the Inhumans' Terrigen Mists were released into the atmosphere. So now a team of X-Men just looks like a regular bowling team. They're a team of superheroes in tights in a world where everybody is a superhero. I mean, it just doesn't really look that cool anymore. In this future, Cyclops himself becomes a teacher and leads an entirely new team, because there's of course a handful that ought to be struggling with their new powers like he once did. Scott led this new team until they were an effective unit, and then 3 years later, Scott and his X-Men team joined Mar-Vell in his journey to collect powerful artifacts to kill Death, and then, build a paradise in what used to be the realm of the dead. When Mar-Vell did kill Death, a new problem came to be. Now nobody on Earth could die. Which sounds pretty good, but it was actually really sad and everyone just got old and sick. So Scott would now communicate with the Phoenix Force, who is in the realm of the dead. Ouija board not included. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, that would be awesome. It really does help us out. You're amazing. Now let's get right back into this list. No more wasted time. Number 8. Scottius Summer Isle. Scaling back to the year 1602, the era where if you could do bed mass, you were deemed a witch and then subsequently killed. That era. So superheroes existing back then would surely cause a stir as well. Mutants on this Earth 311 were referred to as witchbreed and were constantly being hunted down. Now when he was first found, his chest was branded with an X. He eventually meets with other heroes, most notably Carlos Javier, who saved his life and then invited him to the school of witchbreed. And no, I don't mean Hogwarts, the other one. Number 7, House of M. Scott Summers from Earth 58163, also known as the House of M reality. We find Scott in a much better predicament when we first see him in House of M issue 2. So this is a reality where Magneto has now lost the war and his daughter Wanda, aka the Scarlet Witch, lost her mind. She couldn't get a grip on her powers or reality for that matter, so Xavier gathers the Avengers and X-Men to figure out a game plan. They get to Genosha to talk to Wanda, but then when they get there, Wanda, Magneto, and Quicksilver are nowhere to be seen. Reality itself has changed. Peter Parker wakes up, and now he's married to Gwen Stacy, who used to be dead, instead of MJ. And then for Scott Summers, well, his life is great in this altered reality. He's happily married to Emma Frost, and they live in a mutant world. Layla Miller came in to break the bad news to Scott that this peaceful family man lifestyle was all Wanda's doing. So Scott was of course on board when it came to getting reality back to normal. Number 6, Scotty Noir. Coming from Earth 90214, the Noir universe, we get a darker take on Cyclops and also more realistic. See, in this universe, Xavier wasn't tapping into the minds of the world's finest, but instead he opened a school that trains sociopaths how to be the best criminals. It's dark and not just in style. I mean, the story alone, Jean Grey's dead body gets washed up onto the shores of Welfare Island, so the X-Men were trying to figure out a murder case. That led to them also discovering the deaths of police officers around the city. Just a grim tale. Now there's no spandex or monologue. Scotty instead wears a suit, a gangster hat, and just a red visor, you know, for the Sin City look. And as for weapons, he carries with him a pair of twin revolvers. A little bit different than our usual 616 Scotty. Number 5, Summer Scott. AKA Starbolt, Summer comes from Earth 80827. She first appeared in New Exiles issue 9, the Soul Awakening storyline. She dives in during part 3. At just a young age, she was recruited into Emma Frost's X-Force, and the training here is quite brutal. Once her and her fellow X-Force team members meet the Exiles, they get defeated easily. Summer's team just isn't coordinated enough yet. But both teams later on combine their powers when they attack the French. Yeah, they take on a fleet in order to save the Queen. How epic is that? This universe's Bobby Drake, Orion, freezes the water while Starbolt rides a snowmobile towards the ship, of course using her optic blasts. It really doesn't get better than that, folks. I don't know what to tell you. Number 4, Basilisk. Okay, a little less fun than Ski-Doos and the High Seas. We now look to the Age of X timeline where mutants were despised and treated horribly. Scott, now known as Basilisk, first appears in Age of X Alpha issue 1. I made fun of Scott's visor in the Noir universe a little bit with his regular glasses, but here he doesn't even get one. In fact, he doesn't even get eyelids anymore in this universe. He now resides in Alcatraz where the guards control where he looks, when he looks, and who gets executed because of it. He's literally a living weapon. He finally figured out a way to control his mask and then he broke out, freeing all the other mutant prisoners, but that's a long time to not have eyelids. What a horrible, horrible time. He must win the staring contests that all the cellmates do. It's so mean. Sorry, Scott. Number 3, Sheriff Summers. Coming straight from the Rootin' Tootin' Wild West, Sheriff Summers makes his first ride in the pages of Extreme X-Men Volume 2, Issue 4. Dazzler and the team have to destroy 10 evil versions of Charles Xavier, and they of course have the help of, well, Xavier Head. The team meets the sheriff in the following issue, and he's blasting away on his horse next to Colossus, page 6. It's nice to see him here after what we just talked about. Now he's a sheriff, he's not a prisoner executing mutants. We're on the right path. I'm just kidding, evil Xavier was using him as a pawn. But we're getting better, we're getting better. Number 2, Ray Summers. The Amalgam Universe, so much fun. In the pages of DC Comics back in Smash Comics issue 14, the Ray made his first appearance. There's a link. He was exposed to extreme sunlight and lightning at the same time, and then in turn got these energy powers. So when you combine him with Scott Summers in JLX issue 1, you get the lovely Ray Summers, aka Apollo. While other amalgams are obvious and quite out there, like Super Soldier, Superman, and Captain America, this one's basically just Cyclops with more power. Sunlight makes Ray stronger, although he was raised from mutant-fearing parents that kept him locked inside, telling him the sun will kill him. Kind of like Nick Swardson from the Benchwarmers, for the select few who have seen that. The OG few who've seen that. He can absorb energy from the sun and blast it then out of his eyes. I don't blame the parents for being afraid, that sounds pretty wild. And finally, number 1. Ultimate Cyclops. The 1610 universe, aka the Ultimate Universe, this version of Summers first appeared in Ultimate X-Men issue 1. The team was younger in this run, so Cyclops was only in his teen years. But even so, he was leading this team. He would disagree with Xavier often, even going so far as to join the Brotherhood at one point. Scott can squash beef for the greater good. He allows Wolverine back in the crew even though he previously tried to kill Scott. But he did end up with Jean Grey. It only took him a few years to get the courage to admit his feelings. Now, after his time as headmaster, Scott had a substance abuse problem. He was addicted to this drug called Banshee, so Jean had to help him through that one. Now, when Magneto's ultimatum wave hit New York and wiped out Scott's friends and teammates, he himself executed Magneto. But these wars don't end, so naturally Magneto's speedy son Quicksilver came and got payback using the same bullet that took the life of his sister, the Scarlet Witch.
Number 10. Zombie Dark Phoenix. This version of Jean does have some perks when it comes to power set, but ultimately her downfall is, well, being stuck in the Marvel Zombies universe, where many zombies get taken out by fellow zombie hero Hulk. Here, however, Jean is supposed to possess the Phoenix Force still, which in theory I think should have allowed her to resurrect herself, but maybe that works differently when you get completely punched to smithereens by the Hulk. But I mean literally, she gets punched through the torso and then the Hulk crushes her head with his fist in Marvel Zombies 2 issue 5. It's quite gratuitous because, well, Marvel Zombies. Still, however, in theory, the zombified version of Jean should have been considered one of the most powerful. And overall, for the zombie heroes, even being defeated by the Hulk, she was considered one of the most powerful, running with the zombie Galacti, aka powered cosmic zombies, on Earth 2149 or Earth Z prior to her death. Number 9. Ultimate Jean Grey. Ultimate Jean Grey ended up becoming the leader of Tian, which I think gives her a power boost, but on the other hand, she was not made as powerful as her 616 counterpart when it comes to her abilities, so for that, she gets moved down a peg. While telekinesis was initially Jean's main power set on Earth 616, here in the Ultimate Universe, Jean seemed to primarily be more of a telepath, who also has telekinetic abilities. Jean, as a telepath, can psychically cloak herself or others, but not against stronger telepaths. She can heal trauma or give you trauma by altering your memories. She can give others amnesia too, and use her telepathy to create vivid and realistic illusions. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, if you want more lists about Jean Grey, or just more mutant lists in general, because I love doing those, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up, and maybe share it, maybe give it to a friend you think, needs a little Jean Grey in their day. Number 8. Jean Grey, Earth 18119. Earth 18119 is the reality of Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows. It was destroyed and then incorporated into Doctor Doom's Battle World, and after the destruction of Battle World, was then completely recreated and incorporated into the multiverse by Mr. Fantastic. On this Earth, Jean's power levels are comparable to her main continuity counterpart, but she also has the added strength of being a mother, which probably makes her both a more determined hero and teacher in this reality. On Earth 18119, Jean ended up breaking up with Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, after he lost faith in Professor X's vision, and instead ended up dating and later marrying Wolverine. Together they have a daughter named Kate, whose codename is Shine, and she's super cute. Number 7. Madeline Pryor. A lot of people think of Maddie as being a weaker version of Jean because she's a clone, but I would argue Maddie is either on the same level of Jean or at least has the potential to be at Jean's level or even more powerful. Why? Well, Madeline Pryor might be a clone, but Mr. Sinister also made her using a part of the Phoenix Force, which means that Madeline Pryor is kind of both Jean and the Phoenix Force all in one. She has like built-in Phoenix, which you'd think would make her connection just a touch stronger. Madeline, also known as the Goblin Queen, is also well versed in magic, something Jean hasn't really dipped into herself. I'm not saying she's more powerful than Jean Grey every day of the week, I'm just saying the potential for her to be more powerful here and there definitely exists, at least in my opinion. Number 6. Black Queen. This alternate version of Jean Grey comes to us from Earth 39529, which we get to peer into through 1989's What If series in issue 59. This What If asks the question, what if Wolverine led Alpha Flight? The answer? Well, the fate of Jean Grey would end up really dark. Wolverine becomes the leader of the Alpha Flight team due to the fact that the X-Men were unable to rescue him as their rescue team was killed by the Canadian military. Alpha Flight are the ones sent to rescue Jean after she ends up brainwashed by the Hellfire Club and joins them. Unfortunately, upon arrival, Wolverine learns it is too late as this version of Jean has already gone full Dark Phoenix. Logan has no other choice in this reality but to kill her in order to protect everyone else, basically on planet Earth. I don't know about you, but a completely evil Jean Grey who has gone full Dark Phoenix seems pretty powerful to me. I think Logan got lucky by even being able to kill her. Number 5. Jean Grey Earth 7642. This alternate version of Jean comes to us from a Marvel and DC crossover universe assigned the number Earth 7642. In fact, after her initial appearance, Jean from this universe would also appear in stories pertaining to her past in a crossover with the Wildcats, who were over at Image at the time. So just all the crossovers really. In this reality, Jean does become the Dark Phoenix, wipes out a star, and then takes her own life, much like in the main continuity version of the story. But instead of that not being the real Jean and learning that she was actually alive but hidden underwater, in this universe, Jean is resurrected by Darkseid, who intends to use her in his pursuit of the anti-life equation. The Teen Titans and the X-Men team up to defeat Darkseid and Jean, who then recovers her memory of her life before she was Dark Phoenix and turns on Darkseid, once more sacrificing herself to save everyone else. Ain't that just the way? Number 4. Apocalypse. In Age of Apocalypse in the reality of Earth 295, Jean ends up eventually taking on the mantle of Apocalypse. While she perished in this reality shortly after that happened, it's basically because she sacrificed herself in order to protect other people. As I said, that always happens. Jean Grey was so powerful as Apocalypse that she even managed to hold on to her own personality, but she could feel that influence of her new role working to change her, as she expressed that she did feel intensely arrogant, which might also be why she was cool going out the way that she did in the end. Cause you know, I feel like Jean wouldn't want to be fully taken over by that force. Number 3. God Level Phoenix. This version of Jean comes to us from one of the short stories featured in X-Men Millennial Visions 2000. In the story by the maker, we learn that Jean is one of the few to survive both Deathbird and Magneto's attack. Unable to stand against them as they are, the X-Men turn to a device Forge created to evolve them further, giving them basically godlike abilities, or raising their abilities to become godlike, perhaps I should say. Jean, as her power-up, gains full and complete control over the Phoenix, making her more powerful than ever before. Definitely not a hero you'd want to go up against, though I honestly wouldn't want to go up against Rogue either in this reality, who you just need to be within a mile of to have your powers and life energy drained, which sounds pretty scary, at least if she has any skin exposed. Number 2. Zorn. While she might not have gone dark or taken the powers of Apocalypse, Jean as Zorn from the alternate reality of Earth 13729 is just all around one of the most powerful Jeans in the multiverse, in my humble opinion. Her powers are like her main counterpart but improved, making her one of the strongest all-around alternates out there. Of course, even then, like most alternate versions of Jean, and even main Jean, Zorn still perished in the end. In X-Men Battle of the Atom issue number 2, we learn that Jean's powers are so great that not even she can apparently handle them, and during the all-out brawl with all the other X-Men and alternate X-Men, she overloads and ends up exploding, creating a massive explosion all around her and leaving nothing left of her own corpse except for her Zorn mask. Number 1. Phoenix/Dark Phoenix. I really wanted to make Zorn my number 1 most powerful alternate Jean, but then I remembered that technically both Phoenix and the Dark Phoenix personas we saw in the comics were not really Jean in the main continuity, which would make Phoenix an alternate as well, albeit a one who we thought at the time was the main Jean and who existed in the main continuity still, living in effect as Jean. Dark Phoenix was powerful enough to destroy a whole planet and the whole Dabari race, which I believe amounted to, I think, billions of lives lost. Later, after sacrificing herself to save everyone from her own darkness, it was revealed that Dark Phoenix wasn't really Jean, but in fact a Jean duplicate created by the Phoenix Force, which used Jean's body and mind as blueprints to create a more powerful version of her while she rested safely beneath Jamaica Bay. So Phoenix and Dark Phoenix both are Jean, but at the same time aren't, which would classify Phoenix as an alternate version technically. honestly, and definitely one of the most powerful alternates out there as such. In fact, the creation of that retcon is pretty cool because apparently that retcon had to be created because they wanted to, if they were gonna bring Jean back, make her not guilty for any of the bad stuff she did to Dark Phoenix. So they basically had to make it so that that Jean wasn't the real Jean, which is pretty wild. Number 10, the Grand Inquisitor. This alternate version of Magneto comes to us from the reality of Earth 311, the 1602 reality. Here Magneto is known as Enrique, or by his title as the Grand Inquisitor. It is his job to hunt down and kill any witchbreed that he finds. Witchbreed in this reality is the name used for mutants. The Grand Inquisitor does as is expected, but secretly saves the witchbreed who can pass off as human, only killing those who are very obviously mutated. More often those who have physical mutations which they cannot hide. Due to his clout and title, the Grand Inquisitor is a dangerous character who also holds a lot of power. Number 9, Earth 1. Did you know that there is also a one-off Aquaman villain from Earth 1 named Magneto? True story. This version of the character, who shares the same name with the Marvel villain and anti-hero, was a villainous robot who appeared in Aquaman issue 36 in 1967. DC's villainous robotic Magneto also had the power of magnetism, which allows them to manipulate and control their colleague, the Claw. Together, Torpedo Man, Claw, and Magneto made up the villainous team known as the Awesome Three. While the Awesome Three were ultimately defeated, making this version of Magneto sound pretty tame, Aquaman did remark that he really wouldn't want to tangle with their ilk or their weird alien pal again in the future. And he got his wish, because I'm pretty sure they never really reappeared ever again, despite promising to do so. Also, I feel like the team name Awesome 3 definitely makes them sound not like a villainous team. Awesome 3. Number 8, Mutant X. In this reality, Magneto is actually a hero who is good friends with Charles Xavier, and worked together with him but was forced to turn against his friend after a fight with Shadow King left him changed. During the fight, Charles had absorbed the evil essence of Shadow King, which later caused him to accidentally kill Moira McTaggart, who Magneto was in love with. Magneto was unable to forgive his friend and decided to rule the X-Men alone, creating a divide in the team. His roster included Polaris, Quicksilver, Nightcrawler, Rogue, and Mystique. In the Mutant X reality of Earth 1298, Magneto would be one of the last heroes left standing and fighting on. Number 7, Earth Z. In the Marvel Zombies reality, Magneto is a proper badass who ends up managing to fight on against the zombies for quite some time. He also has multiple opportunities to leave and save himself, but proves to be a real hero who would rather ensure or avoid risking the safety of many in exchange for putting himself in peril. And it is because of this that he eventually is taken down, bitten, and transformed. Zombie Magneto. Before that, however, he helped to save the Ultimate Universe and chose to refuse help from the Acolytes in order to ensure their safety as survivors. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it where we talk about Magneto, the master of magnetism, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 6, Earth X. Magneto in this reality at a time was very powerful, but then also went the other way later on. Here Magneto was a savior for mutants who fought off the Sentinels. At this time, Sentinels were activated in order to round up all mutants, including burgeoning ones created unknowingly by Terrigen Mists, which had been released into Earth's atmosphere. Magneto tricked the Sentinels into pursuing him into the Savage Land, whose climate had actually iron-rich air, which Magneto was able to use to defeat the Sentinels, making a safe haven for all mutated folks, new and old, called Sentinel City. However, while this shows how powerful this version of Magneto could be, for a time he had his powers swapped with Toad, though later this was resolved and Magneto would get his powers back. Number 5, Eric Magnus. What if Magneto could build his own metal robot army? That's kind of what this character is about. Eric Magnus is the Amalgam Universe version of Magneto. He possesses a genius level intellect and the powers of 616 Magneto, being a sort of combined version of DC's Doc Magnus and Marvel's Magneto. In this reality, however, Eric had a brother named Will. While Eric's abilities would manifest in his teens and inspire him to create his own group known as the Brotherhood of Mutants, his brother Will, now terrified of Eric, would use his smarts to create Sentinels, which would go on to destroy Magneto's team, with him being the lone survivor. In retaliation, Magneto would create his own robots to combat his brothers, known as the Uncanny Magnetic Men, whose sole purpose was to protect mutants and destroy the Sentinels. Number 4. Ultimate. Although he was ultimately defeated by Revelation and Logic, as well as a powerful optic blast from Cyclops, Magneto here accomplished a lot of awful stuff before he was apprehended. In the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, Magneto was a villain due to his hatred of the human race and his desire to dominate and rule over them. He believed basically that Homo superior are just that, superior, and should rule over humankind, the Homo sapiens of Earth. He was the driving force behind Ultimatum, which caused so much death, including the deaths of pretty much almost all of the X-Men. However, in the end he was stopped when he learned that mutants weren't really the next step in evolution, but simply happened as the result of years of experimentation with the super soldier serum, which among other things also created mutants. Learning that his whole philosophy was built on a lie pretty much destroyed Magneto, giving Cyclops the opportunity to take him out. Number 3. Age of Apocalypse. In the reality of Earth 295, Magneto becomes the leader of the X-Men after Charles Xavier dies at the hands of Legion before he was able to ever form the team. Magneto here is the one responsible for defeating Apocalypse, and while he didn't save everyone in his final stand against Apocalypse, he was celebrated as a hero by all of humanity who thought what was actually the work of a near-dead Phoenix Force empowered Jean Grey was actually Magneto's doing. So not only is he immensely powerful here as a leader and a mutant, but he's also celebrated as a hero by the people, enhancing his influence even more. Number 2. Onslaught. Onslaught is definitely one of the most powerful Magneto alternates out there. Technically, this version of Magneto does hail from the main continuity, but he is also both Magneto and not Magneto, which is what makes him an alternate basically. Onslaught is made up of the combined consciousness of both Magneto and Professor X, so if you ever wondered what would happen if you put these two together, the answer is something immensely terrifying that threatens the existence of all heroes across the universe, aka Onslaught. Number 1. Brother Mutant. Brother Mutant is a version of Magneto that came about after the female alternate Magneto from Earth 127 attempted to take Wolverine's adamantium for herself. Unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately depending on how you want to look at it, her plan failed, resulting in the combined superpowered beings becoming something new. Brother Mutant is a being made out of Wolverine, Magneto, Scarlet Warlock, Quicksilver, and Mesmero combined. This alternate version of the characters therefore possess all their collective abilities, making them pretty OP.